Let's get somebody other than the senator from the, or in addition to the senator from the 53rd. Good morning. Slightly better. The hour of convening has arrived, and the Senate will now come to order. I would ask that all unauthorized guests exit our chamber. The chair would today just like to simply recognize the great chairman from the 53rd District, the Rules Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate your support, and thank you for your leadership. Great day in history. One of the greatest universities in Georgia and in America was first established today back in 1785, and that would be the University of Georgia. Also, today is National Chocolate Cake Day, and that's the senator from the 51st favorite day. And thank you for letting me know. The journal's been read and found to be correct.
Is there objection to dispensing with the journal? Reading of the journal. The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills and resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 20 by Senators Payne of the 54th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 11 of Chapter 11 of Title 15 of the OCGA relating to the Georgia Child Advocate for the Protection of Children
Education
Act.
and Youth.
Senate Bill 21 by Senators Jones of the 10th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to incorporate the city of Stonecrest into DeKalb County.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 22 by Senator Jones of the 10th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to provide for a new Board of Commissioners of Henry County approved March.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 23 by Senators Parent of the 42nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 3 of Title 50 of OCGA relating to state and other flags so as to provide that local governments may relocate, remove,
Government
conceal.
oversight.
Senate Bill 24 by Senators Butler of the 55th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 4 of Title 34 of OCGA relating to minimum wage so as to revise certain provisions regarding the minimum.
Insurance and labor.
Senate Bill 25 by Senators Butler of the 55th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to imposition, rate, and computation of income tax so as to increase. Senate Bill 26 by Senators Rahman of the 5th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 1 of the OCGA relating to elections and primaries generally so as to provide for absence. Senate Resolution Number 20 by Senators Parent of the 42nd and others, a resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to provide that legislative and congressional reappointment be done by an independent reapportionment to be done by. That completes the order, Mr. President.
First reading of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 61 by Representatives Carpenter of the 4th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to authorize Whitfield County, Georgia to exercise all redevelopment and other powers under Article 9, Section 2,
State and local government.
This completes the order, Mr. President.
It's now time for our morning roll call. It is now time for our morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? The chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 35th, 38th, and I think the 37th. 35th and 38th.
Without objection, the senators from the 35th and the 38th are excused. The chair recognizes the majority whip.
Consent to excuse the senator from the 8th.
Without objection, the senator from the 8th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 20th for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 20th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 43rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 26th.
Without objection, the senator from the 26th is excused. The chair recognizes the Dean of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the second.
Without objection, the senator from the second is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? The chair sees none. The secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. Secretary will lock the machine. It's now time for a morning devotional, and I would ask that all senators take your seats and cease all audible conversations. I would ask that the doorkeepers secure the chamber at this time. It's my honor to recognize the senator from the 28th to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and to introduce to us the chaplain of the day.
Please join me as we honor our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now our state's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag and the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Well, good morning, everybody. It gives me great pleasure today to bring my friend, Reverend Tamarcus Cook, here to be our pastor of the day. And I just want to say one thing about Tamarcus, and our friendship has grown through the years, and we're both Noonan Cougars, and that's kind of where it started. He's a little younger than me, but being a Noonan Cougar always is a bond that brings you together. But probably the biggest bond, or not probably, but definitely the biggest bond that brings us together is we both have a belief that we were called to serve God's people, and we serve it in different ways, and that's really the bond that I think that brings us together, and really it's a bond that I think can bring our country back together, is getting back to us all trying to serve God's people and put all the other hoopla to the side. But Tamarcus is a 2009 graduate of Morehouse College. He also earned a degree from Gupton Jones College of Funeral Service in 2014. Currently, he's pursuing his Master of Divinity at Emory University, the prestigious Candler School of Theology. In 2016, Pastor Cook actually ran for Congress, and he actually only lost the primary by 51 votes, but ran a great campaign. I got to campaign alongside him, and it was just such a joy to watch him. He had his little boy there along his side the whole time, and you could just tell what a great father and what a great person he was then, even if I didn't know that already, which I did. But Tamarcus is very active in the community. He's a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, Noonan Rotary Club, Emerging 100 Black Men of Atlanta. He's the NAACP President Emeritus of Coweta Branch. He's the Coweta County School Board Community Advisement Board, United Way Community Advisory Board, Noonan Development Authority Board, National Baptist Convention USA, the National Baptist Convention of America, and the Morehouse National Alumni Association, and also the Piedmont Noonan Advisory Board. and several other things. But probably his greatest joy and pride in his life, I know, is his beautiful wife, Brittany Ivory Cook, and their two sons, Tamarcus Cook II and Theodore T. Cook. And then they have a baby little girl, Ivory T. Cook. So he's also, a little fact I did not know until reading his biography, but he's also a very gifted musician. He's been playing the organ since he was 4 years old. But with that, I give you my brother, Pastor Tamarcus Cook.
Good morning. What a joy, what a privilege and an honor it is to stand before you, certainly. To those who hold positions here, I greet you as well. What a joy it is to have a moment to share with you one of the sweetest things that I know, which is the Word of God. Proverbs 29:2 says, and thank you so very much, Senator Brass, for having me this morning. They gave me 30 seconds to talk, so I want to use all 30 of them wisely. Proverbs 29:2 says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, the people mourn. I pose a question to each of you this morning. Will the people rejoice? Theodore Roosevelt said it this way: people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. This sacred assembly is not in need of greater educated or vastly endowed men and women, but rather righteous men and women. I'd like to suggest to each of us this morning, the people of Georgia are not concerned or impressed with where you have matriculated from, nor your chosen area of vocation, but we are concerned with your care for us. The people will rejoice if the righteous in this room care more about people than you do politics. The people will rejoice if the righteous in this room care more about building families than you do building factories. The people will rejoice if the righteous in this room don't ignore color but embrace it for the beauty that it is. God intentionally and uniquely, differently made each of us all the same. So this morning, as I prepare to close in prayer, because I think I'm at 28 of my 30 seconds, I'd like to encourage you this morning not to waste our time this session. The people of Georgia desire to rejoice as a result of the righteous work of this room. We deserve it, we're counting on it, and we're waiting on it. Psalm 90:12 says, so teach us to number our days. I think I want to say that again. Teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Why? Because there's coming a moment in time when our eschatological view will not be obscured by our humanity, and there will be no more time to meet. There will be no more time to pray. There will be no more time to preach. There will be no more time to pass law and legislation, and at that day, each of us, including you, will stand before our Creator and our Judge, and we will have to give an account of the time that we spent in this room. And it is my prayer that your account will be that your time was spent being righteous. Let us pray. To the Creator, the Sustainer, and the Giver of all that was, all that is, and all that shall be, we thank you. Thank you for this session. Thank you for these men. Thank you for these women. Thank you for whatever journey brought them to this room. Now it is our prayer that you would remove our own personal bias, that you would remove our own personal desires, and place the people of Georgia at the forefront of our heart and our thinking, our concern, our care. Let compassion come from this room. Let care come from this room. Concern come from this room that reaches from the top of Georgia to the bottom of Georgia, that the people of Georgia might rejoice in that this room is a righteous room. We honor you, we love you, and we adore you. We seal our time together now in the matchless, most marvelous, and wonderful name of our Christ, Jesus, our magnificent Savior. And every heart that would agree said amen.
All right, the Senate will now come back to order. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, and ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. I rise today to give voice to an issue that has plagued too many of our constituents across the state since this pandemic began. So many hardworking Georgians continue to have difficulty obtaining their unemployment benefits. I spoke about this problem back in June. We were all inundated with emails and phone calls from constituents desperate for their benefits that were held up due to massive backlogs and administrative glitches. Despite our best efforts to collect data, streamline the process, and work with the Department of Labor to fix these issues, these problems persist. More than 4 million Georgians have filed for unemployment since the pandemic began. And as of last month, according to the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, Georgians remain enrolled in unemployment insurance at a level that is 10 times higher than the same time last year. 10 times higher. So when people wait months for benefits to kick in, or can't get help with something that suddenly goes wrong, that's 10 times more people who are frustrated, or who can't make their rent payments, or who end up waiting in lines at already overwhelmed food banks. Or they simply give up because their government failed them, and that's unacceptable. And just because they go away doesn't mean they found a job. And we shouldn't count these people as finished or successes because we have failed them. We need to do better. We have $2.7 billion sitting in a rainy day fund while it's pouring down rain on so many Georgians. Does the Department of Labor need to hire more people? Does it need better systems? I don't have the answers, but I know we must do better. This is not a problem unique to Georgia. All states are struggling to keep up with the exponential demand on our unemployment systems. But here in Georgia, we need to be honest about the increased need and be willing to address the shortcomings of our system. We need better transparency and accountability from the Department of Labor. And it's time to put the needs of our citizens over the impulse to hoard money when it's so desperately needed right now. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the minority leader for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. Through the years, we have all developed relationships, friendships. And as I have conversation with many of you, you talk about your classmates. And I talk about my classmates. And as the senator from the 41st said, we have got to do something to get this virus under control. And I know things are being done every day, but we can do more. Just in this month alone, I have lost 2 classmates. And through the years, I developed great relationships with them, great friendships. We've traveled together, had fun together, prayed together, dined together. We've done so many things, and we don't live in the same state. But we come together all the time and just love on each other. And so I'd like to ask you all to stand with me just for a moment to give thanks for those that I have cherished through the years.
Senator asks for us to rise for a moment of silence.
Thank you for this moment.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe that our experiences and background inform our approach to governing. I grew up in South Georgia. I was raised by a single mother. She had me at 18. She was a hairdresser, and she had to work a lot to make ends meet. Late nights, weekends, so she wasn't always around. Because of this, my teachers became my extended family. I owe an immeasurable debt of gratitude to them. Really, I owe everything to them. The amazing thing is that my story is not uncommon. This is what teachers do every single day in this state. And I dare say that these men and women don't even know how many lives they impact, how many lives they save. For so many Georgia children all over this state, schools are where they can get a free meal. They can eat. They're fed socially. They're fed emotionally. The importance of schools and teachers cannot be overstated. And it is mere lip service to say we recognize the importance of teachers. I mean, we have the governor even proposing $1,000 in hazard pay for teachers this year. But we have to prioritize schools and teachers in a way that makes them safe. 2 weeks ago, I requested that the governor add educators to the highest priority group to receive vaccinations. And yesterday, 11 superintendents from the largest school districts in the state joined this call, urging Governor Kemp to prioritize schools, prioritize teachers, children, and families by prioritizing teachers for vaccination. You know, I've heard that we don't have enough. We don't have the supply, but more is coming. And moving teachers up will just let them get in the line so that as we get more, as the supply increases, they can be vaccinated. I've also heard that we don't have enough providers to administer the vaccination. But schools have vaccination implementation plans in place themselves, including how they will administer the vaccination to their teachers and staff, separate and apart from the current system that is overwhelmed right now. We say we value teachers every day, but talk is cheap. It's time to act so that we can open schools back up, but do it safely. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, I rise today to give a brief history lesson on how I arrived in this chamber and what I've observed. right after I was elected, a special session was called, and I came into this chamber thanks to the senator from the great senator from the 24th, who allowed me to be his roommate for a week, and I was able to watch how the business of the Senate worked. And during that time, there was a demonstration here in the Capitol where some individuals came in, violated the rules of the Capitol that required them to be removed from this building. A politician inserted themselves into that group by removing their name tag and blending in to cause themselves to have interaction with the men and women who each and every day come down here and protect us. And this has happened several times since then, whether it's an individual on either side of the hall that wants to make a political statement and they require law enforcement to be a part of that statement. And this occurred again yesterday inside this building. I understand that many of you believe that Georgia has made quite a bit of money off tax credits for the movie industry and for other aspects of the entertainment industry. But the men and women that sacrifice themselves, that stand on the front line to protect you and I each and every day that we come down here, they are not employed as stunt doubles. They are not employed as background actors or extras for anybody's political message. They're down here to protect us and to protect the citizens that come into this building each and every day. So please, if you know someone who wants to make a political statement, please do us a favor and ask them to do it properly and to do it in the proper venue, that if it's policy or if it's law, then it has a place in this building. But grandiose political statements that are for nothing else but self-serving messages that require those to be pulled away that are here to protect us, I feel are unacceptable, unprofessional, and just completely disgusting. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to my colleagues in the Senate. I'm an anesthesiologist, and I often joke that no one ever notices when I do my job perfectly, right? Because the default presumption is that everything will go smoothly. And everything usually does. No matter what happens during the case, people are rarely amazed when our patients wake up at the end. Now, in the OR, people really only start to pay attention when the anesthesia, about what the anesthesia team is doing when something is going wrong. And I think it's that perspective that feels familiar as we start to focus on the unseen importance and the underappreciated value of public health. Public health is about prevention. So generally speaking, medical care goes towards treating individuals and patients after they become ill or injured. But public health does something that's different. Ideally, public health deals with the entire population while we're still healthy. And the goal is to keep these populations well. So one of the reasons I think that public health is underappreciated is because under normal circumstances, the patients who have been helped by public health policies can't feel that they've benefited. We usually don't get food poisoning from eating in a restaurant, and that's just presumed, but that's public health in action. We don't usually worry about our kids getting polio. We simply take it for granted that they won't. But that is public health in action. Every time we leave our house and don't get sick from the air we breathe, every time we buckle our kids into their car seats, every time you're not seated next to someone smoking a cigarette on a plane, that is public health in action working exactly the way it should, which is preventatively, seamlessly, and invisibly. So the key problem with public health funding is that, especially when things are going well, That money always seems like it's paying for something that we don't really need. The same way that paying health insurance premiums when you're not sick kind of feels like a waste, right? Because why pay money when it feels like you're not getting anything? When the default assumption is health and safety, it's hard to conceptualize where that money is going. But you never realize you need that safety net until you're falling. And by the time you're already falling, it's too late to check that safety net for holes. So I implore my colleagues to consider the importance of public health, not just in this moment of crisis, but beyond it. And an investment in public health is not only more effective in avoiding injury and illness, it's also far cheaper than treating the problem itself after the fact. The same way that wearing a 50-cent face mask costs far less than a week-long hospitalization in the ICU. A penny of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And as we look to the following year and consider our public health funding, realize that the value of this investment we put in early compounds over time. Simply put, we need to invest more in our public health systems because we cannot afford not to. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 14th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had an unfortunate accident that happened in Bartow County this week where a young man fell from a ladder and lost his life. And many people continue to ask the question, why? Irregardless of which side of the aisle you're on, things happen in life, whether it be COVID, whether it be accidents from ladders, whether it be car accidents, whatever it is, and we ask the question, why? It's interesting, this morning, when I came in, I read a devotion. I'd like to read it to you real quick. It says, a young boy was sitting in an elementary school classroom in Romania. Romania in the 1970s was under the dictatorship of Ceausescu, and persecution of Christians was intense. The military came that morning and demanded every child line up outside. Standing in the snow, an officer threw a Bible on the ground. One by one, he demanded that the children spit on it. The boy stood, so nervous he could barely move. Could he, as a believer in Christ, do such a thing? The girl who stood next to him, his friend, was also a believer. When confronted by the officer, she stooped down and with her knees in the snow picked up the Bible and kissed it. Without warning, the officer pulled his revolver and shot her in the head, and the officers left. The boy's life was spared, but his friend was gone. We do not understand why God does not protect us all in the same way. Some are rescued, some proclaim that God is good. Is he not also good to others to whom calamity and trials befall? The psalmist is clear. Life may seem unfair, but one day justice will prevail. This passage concludes with a promise that God will support us through all trials. Remember, all things work together for good to those who love God and according to his purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many things that happen in life, and there are many questions we have, but just remember, he's still on the throne. With that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Over the past decades, Georgia's leaders have chipped away at the Department of Public Health's budget. Our health departments are understaffed and under-resourced, which has left our state unprepared to cope with COVID-19. In 2020, despite the severity of the pandemic, we did not adequately fund the Department of Health, the very agency that would be responsible for controlling the spread of the disease and the administration of the vaccine. A once-in-a-lifetime public health crisis required an expansion of our public health infrastructure. But that did not happen, and Georgians have suffered because of it. Georgia, in fact, spends 13% less on public health today than we did during the Great Recession. Here are some examples of what that's meant. Our COVID-19 data task force had to stand down in August because it ran out of money. We haven't been able to create a centralized vaccination scheduling system, in part because we don't have the money. Our vaccine reporting system, GRITS, is outdated and unworkable, which has led to delays and confusion. Dr. Toomey has said that the Department of Public Health doesn't have enough employees to run a widespread vaccination system. We're calling on volunteers to meet the need. Dr. David Holland, the Chief Clinical Officer at the Fulton County Board of Health, put it best when he said, "The solution isn't to work people to death. It's to make sustainable investments in public health so that emergencies don't crash the system." He said that Fulton County 2 decades ago had up to 120 public health nurses. Now that number has dropped to 30. Despite all of this, the governor's proposed budget would cut public health from pre-pandemic funding levels. To try to mitigate the damage, he proposes that we rely solely on federal money. But this suggests that those in charge of Georgia government don't believe that COVID-19 or public health in general is a Georgia problem. In fact, our government hasn't prioritized the health and well-being of citizens for several decades. We've been among the worst states on many public health measures, sadly. Maternal and infant mortality and HIV rates are 2 examples. The proposed budget makes clear that public health is not a priority for leadership in Georgia. In the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and because of across-the-board budget cuts, the state is actually adding $489 million to our already near record reserves at the end of 2020, putting Georgia's rainy day fund at $2.7 billion balance. Funding public health should be a priority during a pandemic. We should also take the common sense and broadly popular revenue-raising steps, such as raising the tobacco tax, to meet our public health needs. Funding public health should clearly be a priority over keeping tobacco taxes low. The funds we need are there and can be there through common sense measures, and these resources can and must be used to increase public health funding. Lives depend on it. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd for a point of personal privilege.
Hello, Mr. President. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a pandemic. It's not just a state pandemic, it's a national crisis. We've never been here before except in 1918. I don't think anybody here was there at that point. I would like to commend the governor on all the work that he has done. We have spent 4 times more than our normal budget, over $1 billion extra to help fight this. We're working with the federal governments, we're working with the local governments who have partnered with us because we don't have enough people. It is a struggle to make sure that we do what's needed to help the people of Georgia. But I think that we have done a great effort in trying to help the needs of the people of this great state. More to come, more work to do, and we're going to partner as well and do that too. I'd like to commend a couple of my counties, or 3, Walker, Catoosa, and Dade. They have partnered with the state, and they have a phone bank system where they're taking the calls and helping the community health people in my area to make sure that calls are taken and scheduling are made. Walker County received 1,000 calls the other day, and they're a county of 70,000 people. So it takes all of us to make sure that we take care of the people of Georgia. And I'd like to commend the governor on what he has done, and also the executive order that he gave a few weeks ago that allowed more people to give the vaccination in our area public service workers to paramedics and to others that are qualified to do such. So anyway, there's more to come, and we're doing a great job in trying to get it out there. We still have a struggle to make sure we take care of everybody, and we're going to do that. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well, and thank you, Governor Kemp.
We are going to once again recognize the senator from the 40th for a point of personal privilege for the purpose of introducing the Doctor of the Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to recognize a constituent and today's Doctor of the Day, Dr. Alex Gross. Dr. Gross received his Bachelor of Science degree in biology from Emory University and attended medical school at the University of South Florida's College of Medicine. Upon receiving his medical degree, he completed an internship and residency in internal medicine at Emory University. He then completed a dermatology residency and fellowship at Vanderbilt University. After completing his residency in Vanderbilt, Dr. Gross made Georgia his home. His full-time practice is Georgia Dermatology in Cumming. He is married and has 2 adult sons. His interests outside dermatology include his love of all types of music, watching professional sports, road biking, and occasionally playing the piano. Much of Dr. Gross's spare time is spent volunteering and fundraising for numerous philanthropic organizations such as the American Cancer Society, the Arthritis Foundation, and Senior Citizens of Metropolitan Atlanta, Inc., which supports Meals on Wheels in Atlanta, and other programs that serve North Georgia seniors. Dr. Gross is board certified in both fields of internal medicine and dermatology. Thank you, Dr. Gross, for being with us today. I hope we do not need you. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
We're going to take a brief pause from our points of personal privilege. We have an honored guest with us here today, and somebody that I'm proud to call a friend. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is with us here today, and we've had the opportunity over the last 2 years to really build a working relationship with each other, and certainly we've had a lot on our plates, both the city and the state, and we've really certainly gotten to know each other. Mayor Bottoms, just as a reminder to everybody, is the 60th mayor of the city of Atlanta, and she's a lifelong Georgian, born and raised right here in the city of Atlanta. She's a mother of 4 children, and oftentimes our conversations start and end with us talking about our kids and the brutal task of raising teenagers. But it's certainly her crown achievement is being a mother, and certainly mine is too, being a father. Her husband Derek has been a great. We end up sitting with each other at a number of events, and certainly have enjoyed getting to know him and his very successful business career. So on behalf of the Senate here, I would like us to welcome Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Thank you so much for your gracious welcome this morning to Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, President Pro Tem Butch Miller, Majority Leader Mike Dugan, and Minority Leader Gloria Butler, and to each of you, especially our new senators. It is a pleasure to be here today. I just had the opportunity to share with Speaker Ralston and the House, and I shared with them that each time I come into this building, I think of my family's history in this state. And I don't know if it's true or not, because sometimes oral history can be quite creative. But I am told that my grandmother's grandfather, a once enslaved man by the name of Shepherd Pete, served in the legislature during Reconstruction. And I've had the opportunity to go to the archives, and I found a document that he signed with a big fat X. So I'm going to assume that he could not read or write. But here I stand as the 60th mayor of Atlanta, on the hopes, dreams, and work of those who came before me. And so it is that you are gathered during this session creating hopes and dreams and doing the work that will impact generations to come. As we mourn the passing of Hank Aaron, I saw a quote that I thought was quite appropriate to share with you. In playing ball and in life, a person occasionally gets the opportunity to do something great. When that time comes, only two things matter: being prepared to seize the moment and having the courage to take your best swing. So I know that we are all prepared. I know that you are prepared. And I look forward to us seizing the moment together, as we have done over the past 3+ years that I have been mayor, and taking the courage to do what's right and do what is good for the generations to come on behalf of the great people of Atlanta and the people of Georgia. Thank you for your partnership and your leadership. May God bless and keep you, and my prayers are with you that you have a safe, productive, and healthy session. Thank you.
We'll go back to points of personal privilege. Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've heard a lot of important comments today, and each one has merit to its own degree. I do want to comment, and I agree with some of the comments about the challenges we face with the Department of Labor and unemployment benefits. We do need to understand and remember that we had one of the best economies ever in the history of our nation, only to be hit by a 102-year pandemic, which no one forecasted, nobody in this room, I don't think anybody in the world. And we have to work together and be careful not to politicize a pandemic. Another comment was made about vaccinations. We are giving out those vaccinations at a record pace. And we have our teachers, who we hold in the highest regard, as well as their parents, their students, and their administrators and other staff. They're already on the phase of rollout, folks. And I want to give credit to Dr. Toomey. I want to give credit to the governor. And thanks to the great work by the governor of keeping our state open, we have people working. We're the 8th year in a row the best place to do business still. And if you look at states in the Northeast or the West Coast or even the Midwest, they are struggling. It will take years and years and years to recover. And yet Georgia, across the board, is doing extraordinarily well. And that's when people don't politicize, they don't put politics in it, they do the right thing. And I give that credit to our governor on the second floor, to our lieutenant governor, and the work that we do here in this body. And I'm going to ask us to remember, too, that when we get federal funds any one year for public health or any other agency, we appropriate twice a year, folks. We come back, we have an amended budget, and we have a full budget. And when that funding from the feds one day dries up, we'll do what we always do. We will add and appropriate monies back in. So I'm going to ask everyone here, and I'm going to ask our friends in the press, to not politicize a pandemic, a 102-year pandemic, but rather work together and look at all the great work and the positives that are happening right now so we can get to the other side. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. We have another distinguished, honored guest with us here today, former President Pro Tem, back from an international assignment. Tommy Williams, thank you so much for joining us. I'll warn you, you're hanging out with some rough company right now. But you look well aware of that, so that's okay. Chair recognizes the senator from the 44th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senators, I rise this morning to give a tribute to Mr. Henry Louis Hank Aaron. Henry Aaron was born in Mobile, Alabama, in a family of modest means, but a lot of love. Although his family could not afford baseball equipment, he practiced with materials he found in the streets and made a bat out of tree limbs. This young man from Alabama became a baseball star, a record breaker, inducted into baseball's Hall of Fame, became a businessman owning car dealerships, Church's Chicken, Krispy Kreme, received the nation's highest civilian honor, the Medal of Freedom, from President George Bush in 2002. Henry Aaron became world known as a great athlete and record breaker of Babe Ruth's record in baseball. He was a man of great courage, receiving over 1 million pieces of hate mail during his time of getting close to breaking Babe Ruth's record in baseball. But during all those threats on his life and his family, he continued playing his favorite sport to the best of his ability with grace and style, with his head high, and treated everyone with respect and dignity, even when he was not treated that way. Hank, as we affectionately called him, was a wonderful person, one who walked with kings and queens but never lost the common touch. History will remember him as a great and amazing athlete, but people all across Georgia and the nation will not only remember him for his baseball abilities, but we will remember him for his kindness and magnanimity. We are grateful for his generosity, always giving of his time and talents to ordinary people, especially youth. As many of you remember, a couple of years ago, we honored him in this Senate chamber for all of his accomplishments and his contributions to the state and the world. Accompanied by his wife, Billy, they both made comments and were very inspirational, and they were very grateful for the moment. So today, the senator from the 44th District of Georgia salutes number 44, hammering Hank Aaron for the amazing person he was. I join other Georgians in remembering him as a community and business leader, generous humanitarian, and philanthropist. So today, we honor the long and wonderful life of Mr. Henry Louis Aaron. Mr. President, I would like to ask for a moment of silence in the Senate chamber to honor the life and the legacy of our friend, Mr. Henry Aaron.
Senators ask for us to rise for a moment of silence.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair would like to recognize the pro tem.
Mr. President, if it pleases the chamber and the chair, I would like to yield my time to the former President pro tem, the gentleman from Lyons, Georgia, Tommy Williams.
Feels like an appropriate opportunity for you to address the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. I've spent the last 3 years working with Sonny Perdue in Italy, and it's been a dream situation for me. I was working with the World Food Program, which is actually chaired by a former governor of South Carolina, David Beasley. The World Food Program feeds 820 million people. There are 820 million people that are food insecure. There's 125 million that frankly don't have anything to eat today. So that was a very rewarding experience. They do a fantastic job. They were actually nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for their work. And let me just tell you, no matter which administration it was, America's the biggest giver. And has always been. They give about 22% of the entire budget. So, you know, we can take pride in that. We should take pride in that. Most of the real hungry people today are in Africa, and most of the reasons are conflict. It's hard to build a farming system when people are fighting, so it's a challenge. I think we're doing a pretty good job. We could have, this must be the governor. No, it's actually a customer that wants to buy some olive oil, which I'm looking to go. But I also work with the Food and Agriculture, it's called FAO organization, which is part of the UN, and we deal with ag policy there. And, you know, Americans' view on ag policy is not just like the Europeans or others. I would say, though, the world is getting a little better when it comes to food security, even with COVID, because of science and technology developing new seed and production systems, and ag is just getting better. You know, the Chinese, when I was teaching English in China, most of them were still hungry. That changed. Now China is feeding themselves. India is the same way, with almost 1 billion people. India has modernized their agriculture and is able to feed themselves. The real problems still seem to be Africa, and so I was working on some projects with the ambassador, who's a farmer from Indiana, to try to develop some new approaches to Africa, and we were making a little progress there, and hopefully that continues. But it's a pleasure being back in the Senate. I'm happy to be back home pruning olive trees and just enjoying my family. And thank you for letting me have a few minutes today. Bye-bye.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd for a point of personal privilege. We're working our way through this.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm rising today to remind everyone that today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. In 2005, the United Nations named January 27th as International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is that I serve along with a senator from the 2nd on the Commission for the Holocaust of the state of Georgia, and our mission is education. And so I'd like to ask everyone to go by the first floor. You may remember that we had a big ceremony last year in which we installed some educational panels about survivors of the Holocaust. They're on the first floor across from room 110, and if you haven't seen them, I think everybody would learn something, and it will help us all communicate with each other. Thank you. I yield the will.
Sorry, the chair had to do a little house cleaning. The senator from the 26th was in the wrong seat just for a second, and he had his button pushed. Chair would now like to recognize the distinguished senator from the 26th for a point of personal privilege. I knew what you were thinking.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I come to the well because I'm sick and tired of getting phone calls in the middle of the night about something that happened last year. We've got a labor commissioner that ran for that office. And here we got folks that can't get claims settled that were last year. It's not about money, because you got enough federal money to hire the folks to do the job. What needs to happen, the press needs to ask the question, what are you doing with the money? And why folks can't get the claim settled? You call, you can't get anybody on the phone. And here in the legislature, we've not been able to get an answer from the labor commissioner. And it does not make sense for us to sit around and have folks calling us all the time about claims and unemployment claims that have not been settled. He's got the money to hire the folks. It's not a problem with the General Assembly giving him money to get the stuff done. It needs to get done, and I'm sick and tired of getting the phone calls about unemployment benefits from last year. So we as a General Assembly need to tell the Labor Commission to come over here and sit down and talk to us and tell us what the problem is, and let's get it resolved. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 39th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to my colleagues here in the Senate. What brings me to the well this morning for the very first time is a man whose name you've heard mentioned twice already, who I've had the great pleasure to know and who has been an institution here in Georgia and especially right here in Atlanta for over half a century. Since he arrived here in 1966, Henry Louis Aaron, also known as Hammering Hank, has left his mark as an athlete, businessman, community leader, and philanthropist. And as we all know, he died last Friday of natural causes at the age of 86, and his funeral service is taking place this afternoon. I am preparing a resolution that I plan to present to his family once that's finalized, and perhaps you'll consider signing it as well. Mother Teresa once said, "I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples." This perfectly describes the impact of Henry Aaron's legacy. His pursuit of excellence was always on display. He was an amazing man who excelled on and off the baseball field. He was a businessman, a community leader, and a philanthropist whose commitment to the city of Atlanta showed through his entrepreneurial and his civic endeavors, and a man I was proud to know and have as a constituent of Georgia, and especially as one of my constituents in District 39. May his life and legacy continue to create ripples that change the world. Thank you. I yield the well.
The chair could listen to stories about Hank Aaron all day long. Somebody asked me the other day, how would you pitch to Hank Aaron? And I said, I'll take my chances with the next hitter. And that's serious. The chair recognizes the senator from the 9th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to reiterate what the senator from the 26th presented to us today. Since I've been here 2 weeks, well 3, besides the week we were off in recess. Since I have been here, I have received over 10 emails about unemployment. People are hurting. People cannot feed their families. I want you guys to think for a minute. Many of us go home. We have a home to go to, everything's paid. We have food. Our kids have great child care. But we have constituents right now that don't have any of that. Last year, I participated in a rally in front of the Gwinnett Labor. I had constituents coming to me in total despair because their claims had not been resolved. I challenge you all to meet with some of your constituents who are still waiting for claims that haven't been processed since last year. Look in their faces, look in their eyes, look at the desperation. We have got to do better. I keep asking the question, what can we do? Why isn't our labor commissioner processing these claims? What's the problem? I keep hearing that we have the money, but that money is not being used. So we have got to do better. We are all here to serve the people, and this is not serving our people. Please talk to your constituents. If y'all want to see any of the emails that I have, I will be happy to share. But let's do better because they're asking. I yield the will.
All right, we're now going to move on. You've got a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? The chair hears none. Is there objection to adoption of the resolution on the consent calendar? Chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. We will now take up the adjournment resolution. Mr. Secretary, please read the resolution.
House Resolution Number 31 by Representative Burns of the 159th, a resolution relative to meetings and adjournments of the General Assembly and for other purposes. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the Majority Leader to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I get going, I learned today that we have two professionals in here to put people to sleep. And I want to commend y'all for the work that you do. And I also want to commend all the amateurs that are trying to achieve the same thing that y'all are doing that are here in the body as well. So what we have before you today is the adjournment resolution that doesn't obviously take us to adjournment. It takes us to day 13. It just gives us the ability to forecast out a little bit what our daily lives are going to be. And we're already going to work on extending the days past where you have it right here. So not complicated. I talked with my counterpart, the minority leader, about it this morning. It's just one of those that an administrative act that we need to take up. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
The Majority Leader has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the resolution? The chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Mr. Secretary, please unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please lock the machine. On the vote, the yeas are 48, the nays are 0, and this resolution is adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair sees none. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 o'clock on January 28, 2021.
Mr. Secretary, please read the announcements.
Rules upon Adjournment Committee is canceled. Health and Human Services Committee is canceled. Natural Resources and Environment Committee is canceled. Education and Youth Committee will meet at 2:15 and 3:07 CLOB. Retirement Committee is canceled. Finance Committee will meet at 3:30 and 4:50 in the Capitol. The Judiciary Committee will meet at 4:45 and 3:07 CLOB. This completes the order.
Does any senator have an announcement? Chair recognizes the pro tem for an announcement.
Mr. President, I want to remind everyone we have lunch today. Hope you'll join us. We've got a lot of RSVPs, and we'll be there promptly at 12 noon.
Thank you for that reminder. The Majority Leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Thursday, January 28th, 2021 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it. The Senate stands adjourned.